Good afternoon, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Arts and Culture Commission. It is Thursday, April 17th. May we have roll call, please?
Commissioners Derhovanesian.
Here.
Kevanian.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Sharikian.
Yes.
Chairperson Deaver.
Yes.
The agenda for the April 17th meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall on April 11th, 2014.
Next item.
Item 2, consent items. At 2A, approval of meeting minutes from March 20th, 2014.
I will move the minutes for approval.
I'll second the motion.
Comments or changes?
None.
Roll call.
Commissioners Derhovanesian.
Yes.
Kevanian.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Sharikian.
Yes.
Chairperson Deaver.
Yes. Next item.
Item 3, introductions and presentations. At 3A, Library Arts and Culture events presented by Chuck Wyke, Community Relations Manager.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Deaver, and Commission members and city staff. I think just take you through a number of events, past and future at the library. Many of you were there for the ribbon cutting at Brand Library. If you look to the far right, that's Kathy Billings. Kathy has worked up there for a number of years, and she's now the new manager for the entire site. We're real happy that she was able to accept that position, and she's on top of it. We're going to have a lot of fun with her. This is a picture from the gala event. Well attended, was a lot of fun. Really a good way to kick off the whole thing. This is a screenshot of a print that they did on the March 30th open house in the park. There were a number of designs that a couple of gentlemen put on bags or T-shirts, and they are still for sale at Brand Library. An inexpensive price of $10. It goes to benefit the library services up there. A couple of our staff, now that we are open again, we're a working library, so 6 days a week. These two people here are among the people who check out your books, fix your issues if you have any when you come to the front desk. Those are among the first people you see when you walk into the library. And then we have a number of librarians. These two librarians are actually part-time librarians, so people you might not know, but a lot of people recognize them. And there's a number of the rest of the staff. Again, Kathy on the right, just remember her face. You'll probably want to talk to her a number of times. If you look up and down Brand Boulevard and up on Glen Oaks, you will see some banners. They're very colorful banners, and they also advertise the opening of the Brand Library and the fact that we're open for business. Pretty cool. This is he's contemplating his toy piano. He had just a great performance that kicked off the Sunday series at Brand Library with musical performance. One of them was 15 Minutes of Fame. There were 15 one-minute pieces for piano or toy piano. Later in the week, we had the Mighty Cash Cats. In a tribute to Johnny Cash, and Robert Hilburn came and spoke about his book about Johnny Cash with Mary McNamara, the LA Times television critic. And last Sunday, Maggie McClure and Shane Henry performed a duo to a real nice crowd, and they told me as the afternoon went along, the more they kept playing, the more people showed up from the park. So I think over time, with this, the Sunday series, the Friday night series that you know about, I think we'll get good crowds up there when it gets warmer. Sunday, May 4th, 2 p.m., cellist Maxim Velichkin is going to perform at the Brand Library. Again, this is part of our music series. Here's something coming up at the Central Library. You all know Dick Heimbold with the Glendale Art Association. They're going to have their spring salon exhibition at the Central Library. That'll be May 6th through 18th. So we're gearing up for that. They'll have a Verdugo string quartet will perform, and Sunday, May 11th will be their big reception. We have another, a local man, Russ Furness. He went to Vietnam, Cambodia, Singapore just in January, or maybe it was February. He's going to come back with lots of slides of his trip. He said the food was great, the coffee was amazing. It was fairly inexpensive, so if you're interested in traveling to the east, that's a good program to go to at our central library. Miriam Powell recently, last year, came out with a book on Cesar Chavez. She's a two-time Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, and she's been making the rounds, television, radio, print. She's all over the place. We're very happy to have her at the end of May at the Central Library. Coincidentally, that's also the Friends of the Library's annual meeting, and I believe you will all be invited to a little reception ahead of that, earlier that afternoon. This dog, with these cool glasses, this is National Library Week. So, among other things, we've got a promotion of Where's Waldo. So all of our libraries, you'll see our staff dressed up as Waldo. They got the glasses. He didn't need a nose. This particular dog is a dog you can read to at one of our branches. So a couple times a month, parents with their kids come in and they read to this dog. Great fun for the dog. They're usually pretty quiet. They come through the Pasadena Humane Society, but probably more fun for the kids who, in a very comfortable, warm, loving atmosphere, get to read. It's good for a number of things. Finally, our website, Twitter, Brand Library's website. At your desks, you should have the Brand Library Center information and their spring and summer events calendar. There's more calendars coming. We've also got the little postcard from the Glendale Art Association. Any questions?
Questions from anyone?
Oh, that's wonderful.
Commissioner Lee?
Coffee, Vietnamese coffee.
He said, we drink swill in this country. You can't believe how good the coffee. And I said, well, what was it? French press? He said it was just so rich and incredibly inexpensive.
They're French grounds normally.
Yeah.
Because they have a French
But yeah, the background. Now this, he said he got a Singapore sling in Singapore. It was a little more expensive than when he was back there in the 70s.
Well, when I went there to visit in '99, for a full cup of iced coffee was 10 cents. You would not believe. And sugarcane juice was 5 cents.
5 cents. Russ promises to bring some real nice tea that is reminiscent of Far East.
Because when I went, the exchange rate, $1 was equal to 18,000 baht. A dong, I think it was a dong. And so with $100, you're almost a millionaire. And then you're carrying a huge stack of cash. You know, it was very, very interesting. A to-go box, a rice to-go box, averaged $1.20 for chicken, or, like a Panda Express type of meal. Not even $1.50, less than $1.50.
Culinary arts.
Culinary arts. He said he had a good time, so I hope you can come and listen
I
to
can
the
imagine.
show. Come to the show.
Thank you. But I just want to mention, I did see the banners along Brand. I happened to be riding down Brand yesterday, and they caught my eye, and it was really wonderful to see something up along the streets for the brand, but also promoting the arts here in Glendale, essentially, as well. So that was very cool to see.
Comment. I was so happy to see that Maxim Velichkin's name was on the roster. He's actually a very good friend of mine, and I saw him actually just yesterday performing in another concert series that he does. I see him about once a week, and actually we made it out to the Johnny Cash event. Actually, myself and Maxime called me, and of course he's a giant, but of course he's like a teddy bear. And he called me and he said, "We have to go see the Brand Library. It's just recently opened, and there's Johnny Cash going to be playing. This is going to be great." So we were inside, and we were listening to Johnny Cash outside and looking at contemporary art. It was the most interesting thing you could possibly do. But please go out and see Maxime. He's a brilliant cellist, and I think that was Blair Winnington's idea.
Sure.
So I was thrilled when I saw his name in the Concerts at Brand series. So
Great.
Do make it out for that. It's going to be great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item.
Item 4, oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not on this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. The commission may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The commission may refer the matter to city staff for investigation and report.
And the only card I have is specific to an agenda item, so next item, please.
Item 5, business agenda. At A, action items. At A1, motion authorizing commission chair to prepare and sign letter on commission's behalf of Museum of Neon Arts application for a national endowment for the Humanities Challenge grant.
Thank you. The request before you is from the Museum of Neon Art. As mentioned, they have expressed interest in submitting an application for the National Endowment for the Humanities Challenge grant. This grant is definitely, as the name indicates, humanities focused, which covers all aspects of culture such as history, literature, and the visual arts. And the application requires letters of support from both city and community groups and individuals. And for that reason, Mona has requested that the commission provide a letter of support as part of its application. As many of you know, Mona is scheduled to open its permanent home in downtown Glendale at the end of this year, and they'll serve as one of the many city's arts and cultural destinations. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kim Koga, who's the executive director of Museum of Neon Art, just so she can tell you a little bit more, but she can also answer questions that you may have.
Great, thank you, Annette. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Kim Koga, Museum of Neon Art. As you know, we're in the full-on fundraising mode, and part of the strategy of fundraising, besides going after donors and members, is to write grants. So this is an all-encompassing grant. It's a National Endowment for the Humanities, one we've never applied for it before. In fact, I just found out about it 2 years ago, and it seemed appropriate now to make the application. It's rigorous. Some institutions hire just a person to write this grant. We have a part-time grant writer with us working with me and a couple of volunteers. One of the requirements, besides the 25-page narrative, is 10 letters of support, and they need to be from, as Annette mentioned, the community, from within our organization, and from experts in the field. So we're trying to gather those. And being that there's an arts commission now in Glendale, it seemed appropriate to approach you for a letter of support.
Are there questions from commissioners for Ms. Koga or regarding the grant for clarification?
Is there any deadline for the grant?
Yes, it's May 1st, but we're trying to submit it about 5 days prior. It's an online application, and there could be problems, so.
And how long is the duration of the grant in case you get it?
Okay, that's a good question. It's actually 5 years. It's a three-way match. So say if we ask for $100,000, we have to match it times 3, which is a real good opportunity when you're going after donors, because a lot of donors like the idea of matching something. So that's good. We can ask for pretty much the sky's the limit. It just depends on what our organization's fundraising background, history has been, et cetera, that really determines that and what the project really is all about. So we're sort of still trying to figure out what that number will be. But overall, it's a 5-year period to pay the grant to do the match, and it covers 4 years.
Excellent.
So it's a real good opportunity, and it's good for libraries as well.
Thank you. Great idea.
Yeah. How much you're asking?
Probably $100,000.
That's it?
That's it. Yeah.
Will it cover most of your expenses?
No, we're just applying for one position. and then the programs that that person will conduct. It would be a humanities position from someone with a background in the humanities to
And that will
create
cover the
programs for us.
5-year or 1-year expenses?
It would cover 1-year expense.
1-year expenses.
So it's at $500,000 in case you get it.
No, it's times 3, so it's $400,000.
$400,000.
And we have to pay back $300,000, or we have to match it, not pay it back, over a 5-year period. So it's a real good opportunity.
Yes, it's great. Great job.
Other questions?
I don't.
I'll make a motion.
Motion?
Yes.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to allow for the chairperson to prepare and sign a letter of support on behalf of the Commission for the Museum of Neon Art.
And I second it.
And roll call?
Commissioners Hovhannissian,
Yes.
Gavanian,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Sharikian,
Yes,
Chairperson Deaver.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Thank you very much, and we wish you the best of luck with that and all of your fundraising. We're looking forward to the opening, as everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hopefully they will come and let us know when they get it.
I'm sure we will hear about it. Yeah. You're invited back when you get that grant. Next item, please.
Item A2, motion giving direction to staff regarding selection process for chairperson and rules and procedures for commission.
So this action item has 2 different components. So I'll just go through an overview, and then I'll come back with some options and requesting direction from the commission. Currently, the first part is the selection and chairperson. The selection of the chairperson. Currently, the commission nominates a chairperson in January of each year. The chairperson opens the floor for nominations for the position and receives nominations from the commissioners. And once those nominations come in and statements have been received, the selection is of the chairperson is decided by a majority affirmative vote. At our meeting in January, it was requested that the selection date of the commission chairperson be discussed by the commission. Sorry, I don't know why I'm having problems saying commission today. In order to accommodate for the changes in city council and their appointments as a result of the election. So just in timeline, we generally elect the chair in January. On odd years, the city council elections take place in April, and if there's any changes, then that the appointment of the commissioner may take place anywhere between May and July. So this request was as a result of that. So we conducted a survey of the city's 11 commissions just to get a better understanding of what general practice is of selecting a chairperson and when that selection is made. So the survey indicated that 9 of the 11 commissions select a chairperson through nomination. So consistent with what we're doing, while 2 commissions select through a rotation basis. That rotation is based on seniority. And the selection of the chairperson is pretty much split in the middle. It either occurs in January, like we've done, or sometime between July and September to accommodate for that potential change in the commission makeup. So there are several options for you to consider and when making a decision on a specific item. One, you may elect to maintain the current practice when the selection is made, as well as how that's made. Second is to maintain the current practice of selecting a chair through nomination, but move it to July or another date to accommodate for that change. You can change how that is. Maintain the same date, how the chair is, selected. You can change both. So that's the first component of it. Another component that we can discuss is commission rules and procedures. A selection process like this can be folded into some sort of rules and procedures or a policy for the commission. Currently don't have one, and that's another decision that the commission can make. So we've asked different commissions for their adopted policies, rules, and procedure documents. Those were attached for you to review. So you can see each one is prepared specifically for that specific commission and their needs and functions. And should you want to adopt your own, then we can discuss what that document would contain. So again, options for you, direction is to decide, do you want to have adopted rules and procedures, and then if so, what that document would contain, what information. So we'll go back to the first item, which is the selection of the chair process, and I'll take any feedback if a commissioner wants to make a motion or suggest an idea, and then we'll just work through the two items.
Well, I suppose, because I really was very adamant about it, I do believe that we need to go by rotation. And the rest of the decisions and procedures, we will follow the guidelines and whatever is being suggested, because we have to see how it works best. But I do believe that the most democratic and fair way is to give an option of every council person's appointee to have a turn. And because a chairperson within our commission, because every commission has a different kind of rules and responsibilities and the weight that they have in the community. But within ours, I don't think that our chair is like the vice president or a CEO. The chairperson does moderate the commission meetings and also checks the agendas basically to make sure that whatever the will and discussion of the commission was is implemented. So for that very reason, I do think that we are we would be much on the right direction if we go by the rotation. And the rest of the procedures, I'm fine. I'm not that picky. I need to get some ideas as far as which direction, as far as rules and regulations and responsibilities and etc.
Okay, well, just to keep things a little, there's no confusion, let's just stick with the selection process of the chair, because the procedures is a completely different item. So if there's any commissioners, who want to give their suggestion on that specific item, it'll be helpful. I just don't want to forget anything.
I agree with you. That's the best way to do.
I would like to add one thing on the top of Commissioner Derhovanesyan. I agree whatever she said. And also, a commissioner or commission, it's a place of an experience, of learning experience. Therefore, being a member, it adds a value to the community. Plus, if you become a chair for 1 year, that will add the experience for the whole commission. Therefore, by rotation, each member will have that experience, and that will also be a plus for the whole council or for the whole community. Therefore, yes, I would go for a rotation, 1. 2, it gives an educational purpose to each person have an experience within that commission.
Other comments? Commissioner Lee?
It's a good suggestion, but my only concern is that each council person's term is 4 years. We have 5, thus one person, if they're that unlucky that their council person is not appointed back, then they won't be appointed back and they can miss their term. That was the only short sight of this.
Well, considering the period, for example, my term will end in 2017. His term will end 2014. Your term ends 2015. Mm-hmm. So therefore, we can work within those time period.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? I mean, somehow it will fit within the election years. I think it can be done. I don't see why not.
I mean, I think it could be, I don't know, it's maybe statistics.
Adjusted.
I don't know how you would do that calculation to ensure everyone's done. But I think as long as there's turnover in the commission, and depending on how that timing is, I think everyone could get the opportunity. But if they want that opportunity to
Because
be
they can
chair.
decline.
More so, even if it's not on rotation, it doesn't mean that every appointee will get the chance anyhow. So this kind of increases the chance of every appointee, regardless of who are the people on the dais, how well they know each other, they don't know each other. It is a very safe, very democratic way of doing it, especially we are dealing with arts and nothing with politics and anything of the nature. So it's a good route to take, and we have done that years ago. The last 2 or 3 years, it changed the modality. During Joylene Wagner's time, actually she was watching us, and she said, I was surprised that you guys have changed it. I said, it didn't happen by any decision. Somehow we nominated because we were in a situation, and it was the best decision we could have made at the given time, and there was a special purpose for that. But now that we are kind of on a safe grounds, our existence is kind of more stable, and we are in a nice department housed. So, and the directions are clear, the laws and everything is so much organized that I think this would be a very good decision. Thank you.
One other thing I just would like to add is we serve the public, so therefore our intention is to help the public and serve the public. Therefore, either we are the chairman or no,
Of course.
We will still do our 100%. I mean, our purpose is the public and the faith of the public, so therefore, that's how I would put
You're
it.
right, Commissioner Shurikan. The thing is that we are here to serve, and this way everybody would have the flair and flavor of different persons. And here, anything we do in collaboration within the Brown Act, which we always try to do a good job there, and I'm looking at our legal authority here. So in case anybody needs our expertise, even when you had to assign people for different committees for the different projects we all worked together. It was done in a very nice manner that people got, everybody within their own likes or expertise kind of were chosen to help out. So we collaborate. That part is not an issue, but as Commissioner Shurikan said, it's an experience, and it is a way of kind of rotating the service in its full capacity when it is on rotation. Thank you.
Dr. Gavanian, any thoughts to add?
I'm actually kind of on the fence about this because I can see the pros and cons of both sides. When you do have, for example, someone who is constantly being nominated as chair, that means that there is something there in that person that makes them special. For example, the president of our country, for example, is not a nominated it's a nominated position, so that and a whole big group of people rally behind that person and see him or her as a leader. So that's the positive thing about having it in the current way that we have. There's also negatives with that because then it becomes highly politicized. Like if we look at our politics on a national level, it's extremely politicized, and we certainly don't want that here, especially in a small community or smaller community, and especially in the arts, there's no purpose or need for that. The good thing about the rotation system is that, everybody gets their chance at it, but and of course that I see a better light from that tunnel than the other, in the sense that it forces, let's say, somebody who can't make it to all the events and so forth, to delegate that to someone else. And that builds cohesion would build cohesion, more cohesion than already exists on the commission. So I can see the huge positives coming out of that as well. So in all honesty, I don't think it would change that much the makeup and relationships that we have on this commission. The way that we've had it for now, what is that, Commissioner Derhovanesyan, for 8 years or so?
Nine.
Or so?
Mine is 9 years.
Yeah. So we've had that core strength, that core bond between all of us, and I think anybody who's changed and all that kind of stuff has only added and only bonded with us even more. So for me, it doesn't. I can see the pros and cons of both sides. I'm not sure if I have a clear leaning or not, but difficult for me to say, but I would be okay with either. In reality, it would really depend on, I don't know, some revelatory news in one.
Let me add some thoughts to that, because I'm kind of with you in terms of being on the fence. I see benefits and cons on both ends, and could probably be fine with either. The thing that sticks out for me is that Commissioner Hovhannissian, you had noted that while we were already on a nomination system, we had sort of switched over, or we were operating as a rotation. And I do like the idea of everybody having opportunities. I do think it's a learning experience. It's something that I thought about when I came onto the commission for sure. But I also take note that there was a point in time when it, for whatever reason, it was deemed appropriate to actually nominate. And so what it says to me, if I'm looking long term and not just currently, that if we do a rotation, we then are not able to make that decision down the road. As opposed to if we do it as a nomination, we could in practice continue to rotate, but it leaves open the opportunity to do some to make a change. You know, if we went that direction, there's a concern that it becomes politicized. You might have a term limit for consecutive terms, so somebody couldn't. Unless everybody voted to change that, somebody wouldn't be sitting in this position for, say, more than 2 terms. But so that, to me, I mean, I agree. I could go either way on it, but the concern I have is that one limits you and one does not limit you. Let me ask Ms. Cleary. Sorry.
I was just going to add, I mean, either system, if you go to a rotation in particular, you do need to develop criteria and guidelines. So, you know, who would serve at what year? I mean, which appointee would serve at what year? I mean, that could address your concern if we had guidelines, if there is an instance where we can't do the rotation, or what somebody else said, if somebody isn't interested. But if we have written guidelines and criteria for that, we definitely, if we do a rotation, we need some written guidelines to follow, so it's very clear.
Yeah.
Chair Deaver,
Yes.
Chair Deaver and commissioners, I was thinking the same thing. What if 1 year two commissioners are appointed at the same time and they'll have the same term? At some point, you know, if those two are up for consideration, you would need some sort of way of deciding, you know, which one's going to go first and which one would go second for the following year.
Could I respond to that? Well, that is true. Everything needs to have some kind of a legal procedure, or everything needs to be a bylaw which discusses that. But I do believe that that's very correct. We changed our direction because there was a dire need for that. Right now, the way we are, and we are dealing with policies, and policies always come from whatever is possible for the city government, and the direction comes from the legal authority. What we do is a yay and nay, basically, on most of the issues. So as far as the legalities and major issues that are being discussed, we are not performing like before. We are not putting different projects and actually taking action in doing them or organizing events. We are discussing about that, and the city staff are planning and doing. So we are actually in a very right place, so that as far as the yay and nays goes, to us, as far as I see, if I'm wrong, I would like you to correct me, that the role of a chairperson basically is to moderate the discussion here, to make sure that nobody usurps all the time or etc., and to mediate if need be, and to make sure that the agendas that have been discussed, and everybody, all 5 of us, have agreed kind of is already on the agenda or not, with the stuff they discuss. If not this time, it's going to be next time, or etc. So it is not a major dire decision as far as politically to say that, like the leader of a country or etc. Our decisions are to some extent already planned and discussed. It's just we finalize it, so or refine it. Or if need be, we are being refined whenever we need to have that. So in that case, I don't see any problem. But as far as, yes, procedurizing in case 2 people are appointed at the same time, as our legal authority says, or if it's somebody's turn and there's a major family issue and that person would decline and would go to the next. So those, I don't think, is that kind of a different thing or difficult thing to take care of. And I'm willing, if people will agree with rotation, for us to get that procedure in place.
One thing I just want to comment on with regard to the role of the chair. I think that is part of the question that was will come next, which is, do we want to have in place what are the roles and responsibilities of commissioners and or of the chair? Because I think there might be certain expectations, but everybody's expectation might actually be different because it's not written down. So there are some who that would be the role, and there's others that might be in the role of chair and be more assertive about that in terms of representing the commission at council meetings or placing things on the agenda as they can do independently, so they can drive the process as it sits now. I think that's the type of thing we would have to talk about, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion.
I can see your point, but based on whatever is happening so far, I do see that anything needs to be discussed. It goes through either Cindy Cleary or Annette Vartanian. So that part of discussing as being assertive and using the right kind of a lingo to discuss in those situations, I think it's already kind of there. Based on what I see, unless we want to procedurize and give different authority to our chairperson, whatever direction we take, then that would be another discussion. But as is, I do not see that difference that rotation would not handle well.
Is anyone in a position to either provide more thought about that? Commissioner Kevanian, are you still on the fence, or a motion that somebody would like to put forth and see where that goes?
I mean, I am still on the fence because, again, I can see the pros and cons of both sides, and it's not, one is not pulling away from the other, unfortunately. I'm trying to think of what we can do, and maybe it would be easier to talk about the rules and procedures of the chair and the commission first, and then decide whether the rotation system will be better for one or the other. Because right now it seems like there is not a clear
definition.
Yeah, definition as to what the roles of a chairperson are. And so I think that if we define them, then we can move from there. But because right now it's, yes, if we continue the way we function, but that's an if we continue the way we function. That's it's an if-then statement, and I can't make a decision based on an if-then statement.
Ms. Vartanian?
I was just going to ask if it would be easier to have a conversation about what, which is the second part, to identify, because, for example, if the chairperson is given additional responsibilities, then the way that that person or that position is selected, or if it's through by rotation, I mean, that might have an impact. So I want to ask because there are different, for example, other commissions, our first action item today, writing a support letter. For other commissions, it's something that the chairperson has the authority to do so, but we've never authorized the chairperson to do so. So if that's something that you want to allow the chairperson to do without bringing it forward as an action item, then that might impact your decision. So there are a lot of other things. So and just to keep, as we move forward, we're going into somewhat uncharted territory, at least for this commission, is to keep that in mind, that there are going to be new things that come up, and how much that's going to impact the role of the commissioners as well as the chair, because you have a lot more responsibility now too in terms of selecting artists and consultants and making recommendations. So if you feel that it might be easier to come up with procedures, if you choose to do that, because that's still an action item, that's still something we need to hear. And of course, it's a little bit like the situation of the chicken and the egg, which one do you want to do? And if you want to start the discussion and give me your feedback, but then start developing those procedures and see how that impacts your decision for the selection of the chair, we're happy to do that too. It's just, if we're going to go down this process, I think it's important that at least this commission feels comfortable with the decision.
My question would be, was there any problem as far as whatever so far we were doing? Because within the 9 years that we have done, I think in different modalities, whatever was assigned by the council for us, by whatever was the original bylaws of what our duties were, and then for a time it was a standby, and later on we got direction exactly what we need to do. I do not see any problem as far as whatever was happening and the authority of the chair and the rest of the commission had. Now, if it is, but it was always understood among us, the commissioners, that anything that is supposed to be said or signed or etc., it was our procedure. Now we can discuss it later on and bring it again and take it to a vote or whatever needs to be done, that it was supposed to come to the dais and it was supposed to be by the consent of all the five. So, and to authorize whoever is the chairperson, that's what usually we do, to go or to sign. But that is not something new that is we are adding. You know what I'm saying? So I don't see what is the need for all the procedural thing unless all my colleagues think that we need to rehash and start a new kind of exact direction on what the chairperson and the commissioners should do.
I think the issue is that there haven't been adopted rules and procedures, I think, as you're saying, oh, well, this was just something that we did do and we agreed, but, I'm looking at our city attorney, we don't have a formalized process, so we've just, as a courtesy, brought everything to the commission so that it could go through a formal process because you don't have a formal process adopted. Am I So if you, so that's why we can continue to do this. But if you choose to have these rules and procedures, we can, we would, want to be able to put some of these items in. So if you choose not to, adopt rules and procedures, then, these items will just keep coming back, but I think it's very important to be able to come up with something. There is, of course, some that are very, very lengthy, and then some that are just very succinct. For example, Planning Commission is about 9 pages, but it really covers all the important, steps, and that would be probably a good starting point. And then, some are very, very short because it's just a matter of how to place an item on the agenda, which we've been following, I think, Robert's Rules of Order. So we've been following Robert's Rule of Order and then the Brown Act to be able to bring things to you, and we will stay consistent to that unless you want to be able to put in some flexibility. So, and I don't think there's been a problem. I want to reiterate that. I just think if there's a process that everyone's been following, it's not an adopted process. So I think it would be in your best interest to do that.
Chair Deaver, if I may,
yes.
And commission members, and it can, it doesn't have to, again, we've set forth some examples that are, either very detailed, or you don't have to address every last issue, but issues, for example, bringing, if a commission member wants something on the agenda, you can see it's very specific in the GWP. You can see, in contrast to the Commission on the Status of Women, more following what council does. And you can see another example. For example, the duties of the chairperson are on page 2 of the Planning Commission. So you can address maybe just a couple issues you want, or it can be broad and address many issues, whatever the commission feels is appropriate.
I just want to say really quickly that from my standpoint, just to put it out there, I think adopting some process, whether it's whatever the commission would decide as a whole, is important to do. I think both as a new commissioner coming on and even working as the chair, there's different times that things have come across where I have to ask, I don't really know what the process is, and I'm not clear, and I have to go to staff. And as an example, when Mona came today, this was a great example where they have a grant that's due. If we didn't happen to have a commission, we might not have been able to provide that for them because we weren't empowered without having a special meeting to do that. It would have to come from somebody as an individual. So just little things like that where I think it makes us more efficient in the long run if we have those things in place. Sorry, Commissioner Shrakian.
I would like to add a few points. Electing a chairperson, it doesn't have to be with rules and regulation. Rules and regulations and how to run the meeting, how to accept things, those can be done with any type of president elected or nominated or rotated. It doesn't really matter. The president or the chairperson has a certain job to do, and we can write down the criteria, A, B, C, D, and then within those limits, yes, any chairperson can work. Limitation is important because that's how democracy, I think, it works. Even the president has the limitation, but their policies might prolong more 10 years, 5 years later. So therefore, the commission, when we set a policy, for example, our 2013 and 15 programs, they might affect on 16 maybe. Therefore, it's not with what the chairman is doing. The chairman is basically running the meeting, make sure everything is going smoothly through the staff, because the staff has a lot of responsibility. Now, before we had very little to do. Now we have a lot to do. that means we're alive. That means we're producing serious art in city of Glendale, and therefore we might need more internship, we might need more volunteers, we might need to expand our working force. Therefore, a certain laws and regulations should be implemented, should be there to have also for the future, not only for today, that we'll have in the future. Because if we start to accept applications, I think we need to have subcommittees like we had this year to get involved directly, study them, and then come up with a result. So therefore, what's the procedure? What's the best way to do those things? It must have some type of guide in a rules and regulations in order to do those things. Yeah.
I'm still waiting. I mean, I think the commission is a little, spread on how you want to go about this. So I think it would be helpful if there's obviously there are commissioners who want to separate the two. There are commissioners who think that the selection of the chair has to do with the position of the chair and those responsibilities, and that's something that gets included in the policies and procedures. So I think at this point I need further direction as to how you want to be able to move forward on this. If you want to go ahead and discuss the selection of the chair process and then move that way or work backwards, we need to move a little bit beyond where we're at right now so we can move.
And let me ask this, because one thing we haven't talked about is the timing of the election of the chair, and if it were to move to July, we would need to decide how we want to select that chair coming up, and we would probably not have time to put in place those policies prior to that. I mean, just it probably.
Yes, I mean, I would recommend is if you choose to do July, you could always choose to say, well, we want to elect in July or in August, but I don't want you to feel rushed to make a decision to be able to select a new chair. I think you could probably choose to select the chair in July and say, well, we won't have that change until next year, for example. But because once you put that deadline and you're working towards that, I don't think we're going to be rushing. And then there's also the staff availability to be able to bring a procedure to you along with all of the other programming. I mean, that's your first responsibility, is to be able to program the Urban Art Fund and those policies. Yes,
we actually did that because we talked about the timing and we postponed it, and for that very reason we elected for the time that for sure we would like to have Commissioner Deaver to take it over till we make a decision, because this discussion of are we going by rotation, are we going to change the time, so we postponed it to the given time, so everything would be studied and prepared to see what direction, or to bring it to the commission as either we vote on it or however it needs to be done. So this procedure of waiting and postponing has already taken place. It's just now, do we want to? We are all here. We can decide if we want to go by rotation or election. Then we would go with the timing, which is the next step. That when do we think is the best time to do, and if we want to have procedures or whatever guidelines that needs to be set ahead of time. Or we can decide, we can vote here. There are 5 commissioners here to decide that first we want to get all the rules and regulations and to see how we want, what authorities do we want to give to our chair. And then to elect our chair, that would be another thing. But we need to make a decision. We cannot postpone everything constantly.
I'm looking for direction. In January, Chair Deaver was elected for another year, so pending, regardless of what decision is made today. So if we choose to change the process or not, so that's what I'm looking for, is for direction. But I need to know what the direction is. If the direction is to postpone it, then that's your prerogative. I just need to know what that direction is how you want to select that chair. Do you want to nominate? Is it rotation? And then if the next step is to develop those rules and procedures. So at this point, I need some direction.
Let me ask this. Is there a strong feeling among commissioners about changing the timing to July, which was one of the proposals?
Not as, personally, I don't know what my colleagues think. I thought somehow it doesn't work very well, but it was not a must thing in my book. So it is up to whatever everybody else
Well,
thinks.
and the reason I ask is because, for me, I understand tying the procedures to the chair, but we don't have time to do that before July. So if July is driving this process, then what the decision we need to make right now is we're changing it to July, and we need to decide on how we're electing the chair for July, and then deal with the procedures later if people want to have procedures in place. If July is not an issue, then I want to know how many people would like to go through the procedures first and get those developed, and then by January of next year or sometime in the next coming months when we have time to deal with all of that, then make the decision about how chair would be elected. I know that postpones that for you, but the question is whether if there are people who feel like the procedures need to be in place in order to be able to make a decision about how chair is elected. That's what I'm just trying to understand, if that is important. I think it was mentioned, but I don't know if it's important to people.
I mean, is there a need to push or change our date to July or August for selection of the chair? If the consensus is no, then I think if we need a motion to just maintain it keep it for January, then at least that's one decision out of the way, and then the next would be the selection
So
process.
does this mean that if we move it to May, does the decision on the procedure of election or rotation would go also to May, or we can decide on that one now and then discuss about the details for May? Which way does it work?
Can you repeat your question?
If we postpone all this for May, does this mean the decision that we are going to go for the choice of our chairperson by election or rotation would be done now, and the rest of the decision on when would be the timeline for changing the chair's kind of time and the legalities of anything, if we want to have exact direction on what the chair's roles are. If we go that for May, does the idea of having rotation or election change from now to May as well?
I guess I don't want to make promises for any rules or procedures to come back in May because.
Yeah, let me clarify. Actually, sorry, Ms. Vertani, I just want to clarify. When I was mentioning having to do one or the others, that we do not have time to do the procedures between now and because all the programs in place. So it is unlikely that we will be able to bring. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just thinking of staff capacity, to bring back the whole procedures component in May or June. It'll probably happen late summer or fall, whenever there's a break, we'd have to schedule it in. So that decision would mean, in effect, that if people didn't want to make a decision about the nomination process and when it would happen, that decision could also not be made until probably this fall or sometime. If everybody here is okay with making a decision about the nomination and the timing now without knowing what the procedures are, we can make that decision and have that happen in July. And if you wanted, and yes, Ms. Cleary.
I think it would help the discussion if we agreed on when we can do the written procedures, if everybody's agreeing that we need some written procedures. Now, I just consulted with our attorney, and he's saying July, but Ms. Vartanian, what would you think? And the commission, because if we can say July, and then that gives you a little framework for the discussion in terms of...
May I add something? I again say the way we elect our chairperson has nothing to do how we go our rules and regulations.
But that's not
we can decide today that we're going to elect a chairperson every July or January based on our vote. Then the guidelines and the criteria and the job description of the chairman, we can criteria and write it then, which has nothing to do. The president of the country will be the president for 4 years, but the policies, the government's still working. So therefore, you know what I mean? I see what your point is from egg, chicken, but in my opinion, we go and elect a chairperson based on rotation system. Now, his duties, her duties, we can write down 10, 20, 30, as much as we want to. And we can run the business on another issue. That's fine. But this one issue, we'll run it as a rotation every July. Let's vote on it. I don't see why not to.
Well, we can, to answer the first question, I think July or August is a conservative estimate to be able to bring back rules and procedures the direction I'm still waiting for, Commissioner Shurikian, is there are some commissioners who think that the selection of the chair is tied into the policies and procedures. So that's the decision that needs to be made is, not everyone is in agreement that it needs to be separated. So if the commission does not want to change the selection date of the selection of the chair, so if it's going to stay until January, so that means there isn't going to be a change. And if you want to be able to discuss that as part of the larger picture of the rules and responsibilities, or if you want to push it out to another date, or if you want to decide that, then you can do that. But to be able to have that discussion as part of the rules and procedures, it'll probably happen in July or August, because you have a lot of other projects that are coming forward, and that's the earliest that we would likely be able to bring that. So as I mentioned before, this decision needs to be made part of those rules and procedures, that's what we can commit to, is July or August to bring that forward. If you want to select a chair through rotation basis and have it happen in July, then you can make that decision today, and then the other item can come forward. So that's the decision that we need.
And I thought I heard from Commissioner Kevanian that you had said that it was hard to make the decision about nomination versus rotation without knowing what the roles and responsibilities of the chair were. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, that's kind of true. That's a small factor in Bell, but there are certain things that some people who may be put here on a rotational basis may not be good at doing, and we don't know that until we know exactly what the roles of the chairperson are. The president, whether he decides to put on yellow socks or not, is up to him. But in terms of our commission, we can make clear choices as to the chair cannot wear yellow socks. So then that's one of the rules that we have. So if somebody wants to wear yellow socks and they cannot serve as chair. That's kind of yes, it is not entirely, we're not going to control that or whatever, but that's something that, some people are good at certain things. I, for example, may not be good at being chair, but if I'm forced to be put on it by the rotation, what am I going to do? If I don't like speaking in public, let's say, for example, and I'm brought here onto this commission simply for my artistic expertise, what am I going to do then? I'm going to feel uncomfortable, and then I have to put, you understand my point? Is that because it's on rotation, then it's going to go. Of course, you can always skip. But then again, also if somebody nominates you, you can say, I don't want to do it. So it's like, I don't know, it's the same thing, basically, for me, but it's just two different ways of doing it. We can always still vote. We can still nominate people based on, what is it called? Seniority. We can still do it that way, and it's the same thing, essentially. So then why don't we do it that way? And if somebody doesn't want to do it, then they don't have to do it.
What I'm hearing from what you're saying is the issue is whether someone chooses to accept the role of chair, and that's what we can put into the procedures.
Exactly my point. And that we can put into the procedures, so then we can base both the voting, how we vote, who gets voted, blah, 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 the yellow socks, on the rules and procedures. Instead of going at it from, in my eyes, the cart before the horse, which is how do we vote for the chair? Well, let's figure out what the chair criteria are, what our voting criteria is. There's all these kinds of different things. So, and then we can decide.
Could I ask a question? Commissioner Kevanian, within the years that you have been, and even though right now we are much more structured, in a way limited much more, but we are more structured and there is much more direction in exactly what needs to be done. Has there been ever a time that we were going to make that kind of a phenomenal decision or major speeches or discussing things with community and etc. that would any one of the appointed commissioners not be capable so far, unless we are going to make major decisions about a lot of financial situation about our city government and etc., which that is not within our power. It is whatever within given time, it is what is the volition of the commission for spending or how much of it to be spent. It has never been a major decision of which countries we are going to save and help or etc. So I do not see that kind of a cart before the horse or horse before the cart, unless there are other predictions on the way that might bring the need that we would go for that, I would be all for that. But in the 9 years I've gone through the bad times and the good times and all different times, I have not seen that commission would have that much authority into making things that has not been within our procedure so far. If you predict that there would be, yes, I agree with you, because we need to know what we are, then I would be very adamant, and I might vote for the same person for every 25 years. But that is a different situation. From what I see, I do not see the need, but it is up to the colleagues. There are 5 of us, and we have to see what everybody else thinks. I'm fine with whatever the majority of the vote.
I'm just going to put my thoughts out on the table because I do want to move to a motion of some sort.
I agree.
And for myself, I still go back to I like the rotation. I prefer nomination just because I think it gives people more flexibility. You can still nominate on a rotation basis, but it gives you flexibility down the road if things should change and there was a reason to bypass that for some reason. I just think it gives you more flexibility is all, although I do like the concept of rotation. I do think we need procedures and policies, and I really don't care too much whether it's July or January, but it does make some sense to me to have it in July so that you have a full slate of new commissioners. Commissioner Cavagna.
Why cannot in the rules and procedures, for example, state that we must nominate based on seniority? Why can't it say that? Then that solves the problem, doesn't it? We still vote, but it's nominated based on seniority. So can we do that?
That can be done, but you want to think about, give consideration to, again, if 2 members during one election come in at the same time, what would be the criteria for the seniority?
Thank you.
Date of birth.
Thank you.
Date of birth, maybe.
What's that?
Date of birth.
Yeah, again, I mean,
no.
it could be age, or it could be you were previously.
Or your last name, is it A, B, C? You know.
Yeah, again,
there will be ways to resolve everything.
Yeah, and that's what we'd be looking for. You know, if you do have a preference, you know, otherwise, you know, we would look to and give you suggestions.
Because I, from what I can tell, I don't think rotation is the issue. It's not rotation versus nomination. It's simply procedurally what comes first. So can I offer a suggestion? Is that can we I'm thinking like 15 steps ahead, and I'm going to kind of walk backwards because I think that rules and procedures are more important than the process of the chair voting. What I would like to do is offer a suggestion that if we could actually set up a subcommittee to sit down and to create some kind of a draft to then send our colleagues, and then so we can have some kind of a basis, a structure. Because right now, if we sit and all 5 of us have our different points as to what to put in and what to include, we could be here for 5 hours. So that's my suggestion.
I mean, I think if the commission, for staff to be able to bring forward a document to you, I think what would help is if you say, you know, we want to come up with the rules and procedures. If there is a specific rules and procedures in this packet that, you know, you prefer, for example, the Planning Commission one, you could say, this is what we like, this information, maybe give me some more information, then I can work with the city attorney and then be able to develop that. We can consult other, you know, cities' Arts and Culture Commission procedures if we find it, and be able to bring that forward as a draft. A lot similar to the Arts and Culture Plan. I mean, a lot of the other documents, if you were able to just give me some of the most important things, I think, you know, for example, as I keep going back to the Planning Commission one, it's very, very succinct. It says this is when the meeting will take place. This is how the chair is elected. This is how you bring something forward to the agenda. This is the role of the chair. If that's a good starting place for you, then at least we can bring that forward and then look and see if there are any other issues that you want the procedures to address, then we can add that and bring that forward. I think that would be a much better approach because, I mean, the commission does have other subgroups that you're going to be meeting in, so I just think in terms of just keeping things moving fast, that would be the most helpful.
Let me ask this: do you need that information if we were to choose to move forward? If we were to choose to have procedures in place to develop something like that, do you need that information now, or can we email you our comments? I don't know that everybody had a chance to really review the whole packet entirely. We might want more time to think about things. So, could we, in today's action, if we decide to develop something, have a time frame in which we can provide staff some feedback and then bring it back in some sort of draft form based on what you heard at a later date?
I mean, I'm fine with that as long as there isn't an issue. So if you choose to develop those rules and procedures, then, I can give you a 3 weeks or a 1 month timeline to be able to give me, if there's an example that you like here, if there's specific things that you want included, then that'll help me be able to work with Mr. Grant to come up with a draft that we would then bring forward.
Can I ask if there might be a motion for whether we want to adopt the procedure, some procedures policy?
Could I ask before that a question? I would like to ask Cindy and Michael and Ms. Vartanyan. The direction of what this commission and the authority of what commission can do and cannot do is already very clear, correct? What the staff needs to do and provide is also clear. It is, so far. We have gone and it's all perfect and it's in place and there's no problem with that. So what happens is that the city gives us the guideline and the staff are doing all the legwork and they do whatever needs to be done. You guys bring whatever needs to come to us and then we make a yay or nay on issues based on what the issue of discussion is. So I don't see what is that major about the role of individual one of us or the chairperson of the, besides, if there is something, please guide me because I really am getting in trouble in understanding what's happening. Besides moderating, besides making sure that the agenda provides, and if need be, if there is a presentation or etc., naturally the chair would do, or there are times everybody participates, or the chair, or we all decide who needs to do
May
that.
I interrupt? But you just said naturally.
Yes.
But that says to me that that's an assumption. It's not written down. So what we'd like to be able to do with regard to the chair is get that type of information down on paper. So somebody who was new to the commission, was new to the chair, just wanted to learn more about the Arts and Culture Commission, could see what that was, and we were all on the same page. I also want to point out that the procedures is more than just the role of the chair or the role of the commissioners. It's like, do we want every year to give an update to the council about what we're doing? Do we want to have a vice chair, for instance? I don't know if you had an opportunity, because I know these came out late, seem to have come in the mail a little bit late, but to read through this. There's some really interesting things that people have developed. I think some of it's a little too much, some of it's not quite enough, but it's a whole variety of things. It just helps you think, just helps us have a process in place. So there's not the question of somebody needs a grant letter of recommendation. What do we need? How do we do that?
I'd like to add our perspective, which is, we're fairly new. The Library and Arts and Culture Commission or department is fairly new to the commission. So going into this, it would have been nice to have a written definition of what our role was and how we work with the commission. Mm-hmm. So from my perspective, at least, it would be handy to have that written down. Because we went into it and we sort of we made it up as we went, so to speak, based on the needs. And as you've said, we've changed a lot in terms of the dynamics and also in terms of our role. And so all of us have done an outstanding job of kind of figuring out how to chart that course. But it would be really nice. We all won't always be here. So to have a new person coming in and have that guideline in writing would have been really helpful for me, at least, to include the staff procedures or the staff responsibilities. I'd like to propose something that maybe you could use as a motion, just to move it forward, and agree or disagree. But perhaps we could agree that written procedures or rules or guidelines or whatever we want to talk about could be drafted and brought to this commission in July or August with your input. And that we would include in those rules or guidelines criteria for a rotation, because I think a rotation can be flexible. It doesn't have to be set in stone, and that perhaps we change the date of nominating the chair for July, just to throw out a possible motion that we can chew on.
And could we take it in separate motions or as opposed to a bundle?
That I don't, I'll look to.
We did, Chair Deaver and Commissioners, we divide it into categories, but the motion can be one motion addressing all of these issues, giving direction to staff.
One more time, sorry.
I also like the idea, I think your idea about having a subcommittee to somehow prepare those things, go over it before presentation to the commission. That way, in my opinion, for example, if 2 commissioners of our city, they have rotation system, I would just like to see how they do that, A. B is the other 9 commissions that they don't, they have documents which I was not able to read within 24 hours. I would like just to compare apple to an apple. That's first issue. Second, if we have a subcommittee, they will do all, with the staff, they can do all the legwork, prepare it, the 2 options, nomination versus rotation. And then once we have that, that will make things easier for us, and then we can probably vote in May or June. Yes, we can put a timetable till July, but maybe in June, if we have things ready, I think we can vote in June. I mean, I'm trying to save time and have a subcommittee prepare everything for us. If the staff is that committee or one of us or 2 of us, then that something will help this program, as Cindy said.
I mean, as I want to reiterate, I think the earliest we can commit to anything coming back is July or August. We really want to be as fast as possible, but the first order of business, starting in July, you need to start working on your work plan for 2016 so we can include it as part of the budget. I mean, that's something that's right around the corner, and we're barely kicking off our programming for this year. Just want to put this in the context. This is very important. It's just as important, but there's, we have to make those decisions too. So we can definitely commit to July or August to bring that forward. If you choose to have a selection committee, that's fine. Or if you choose to be able to adopt those rules and procedures, we will send this this packet. All of the commissioners will have the opportunity to read all the information, and everyone can submit their comments to staff so we can review that. Equally, if you want to appoint one per commissioner to work with staff, that's fine. If you want staff to work with this, with the city attorney's office, that's fine too. I just, I really want to be able to bring this back as fast as possible, but the reality is because it's not just my work, it's working with the city attorney's office, and I think July is a good date.
You want me to make a motion?
Something in the form of a motion.
I would like to make the motion of Cindy that she put all the 3 criterias in one package and the deadline in July. You explained it was that clear? Cindy, can you repeat?
Well, I had 3 components. One was that we would draft the rules or guidelines and bring them back in, are we agreeing July?
Before
August.
July. Deadline is July,
okay,
latest July.
I think July or August. We really need to be because just looking at our schedule. I mean, I can't say by July. I really can't commit to that.
So August. Okay, so
by August we can
August.
commit to by
Okay.
August.
To get a draft to the commission by August. In that draft,
My understanding will be if by August, this 3rd week of August is our meeting. I mean, that's the date, the latest. But if I see that on July, that's better because we need to discuss it yet. Because if we get the draft in August, by the time we discuss it, by the time we make some type of decision, it might take the end of the year. And that's why I'm putting a rush on it. Not a rush, but if we need help, let's get some volunteers, maybe one of us or 2 of us in that committee so we can make this a little bit faster, and we understand we need some type of regulations, and that's what I'm trying to do. If we say July, I think we should go July, not August. If you need help, Annette, I guess maybe one of 2, I will be available to help you within this thing, so make things easier on the commission.
Well, I think Annette's suggestion is a good one of sending her your input, perhaps, and us being able to come up with a draft by July, working with our city attorney.
Because once we have the draft in July, I'm sure there will be some additions, something we need to discuss it. Hopefully in August we can approve it. I mean, that's how I see it.
And then the second part of my suggestion, that we do agree to a rotation, but that within the guidelines we build in some
That's fine.
flexibility. And then the third part of it was about changing the date. I mean, changing the date of whatever we do, the rotation to July, with perhaps the understanding that we don't begin that until 2015, since Ms. Deaver is in place until January, is my understanding, correct?
It is. I came into the understanding that that could change if we changed the timing.
Well, technically, the way I understood, Commissioner Terry Deaver is elected till January.
Yes.
Therefore, in January, we will make another election, technically. And then if we do
Then in
extend...
July.
Unless the date is changed. If you guys are changing the date of election, either it should be whoever is the chair would change position, or we would go for the following year's August or July.
Okay.
Because basically, when a decision is made, then we need to, if the time of the election or nomination or appointment or rotation, whatever, if that is going to be a certain date and that is approved, that means that day we have to do that, whatever procedure we adopt. So that's for that. Now, my question to you was that, so based on what you read, the number 2 was that we agree on rotation, but we will follow on a certain date by having everything ready for that.
Yeah, for the criteria for that.
Or the criteria for that.
And then, I mean,
That
okay,
sounds
so in
fine.
terms of the timing of the the rotation, am I understanding correctly that Ms. Deaver, Chairperson Deaver, would go from January to January? In January, we would have some kind of rotation, and then perhaps in July, that person would have a short term?
That could be discussed even in July. I mean, if you want to be able to do that. So the selection, I think we can maybe keep the first 2 parts of that motion, which is draft rules and procedures by August, with the aim of bringing that forward to you in July, and then develop criteria for selection of the chairperson by rotation with some criteria. And then at that meeting, based on those procedures, you can choose if you want to have that selection in July or maintain it for January, because we still haven't heard one way or the other if you care when that selection process happens, and maybe the procedures might, and I don't want to leave yet another unknown, but it might change, and then if you choose whatever you may select, then it could, we'll know when your term is up, when the new selection is made. And I just want to reiterate, once we bring back the draft, as with a lot of the policies, generally, staff has taken feedback from the commission, brings forward a draft, and usually within one meeting we're able to finalize that document. So once we bring that forward, hopefully in July, if not August, for your comments, then the following month it'll be an adopted motion. So we've done that with our work plan, with our arts and cultural plan, with other policies, so it's not something that I anticipate dragging out after that point. So I just want to make you feel more comfortable in terms of timing.
I still ask if we can break them into 3, only because I don't agree with one of them, and I don't know if other people might agree with one piece. It's sort of like you don't want to throw out the whole baby with the bathwater.
Which part of it you don't agree?
As I said, I tend, from a long-term standpoint, prefer a nomination process with procedures that push towards rotation rather than a rotation with procedures. It's a slight point.
I didn't understand, honestly.
I prefer a nomination process that has procedures in place that emphasizes a more rotation approach to the nomination, rather than having a rotation with process or procedures related to that, because I just think it leaves you more flexibility in the long term. That's just my opinion.
May I
that's all.
add something? In my point of view, procedure is the way we run the business. We listen to suggestions, how we come up with new ideas, the staffing, and our job description. Whereas the election, it could be only one chapter within that procedure. So you cannot, I don't understand how you could build a procedure based on nomination or based on rotation. You build the procedure, and then one article will be the chairman will be elected, rotation or nomination. The procedure is the main element, not the rotation or the nomination issue.
Did I hear that you would say, just as an example, I thought I heard that in a procedure you might see that the commission could elect by nomination or by rotation.
Exactly.
But I think the question at hand was we wanted to make the decision of one or the other and reflect that in our documents.
Yes, but you can also always change that. The procedure is not written on stone. You can also have a commission that come up say, we would like to change this commission.
Which is what we're doing right now,
Exactly.
but we're being asked to make a
therefore,
decision about one or the other, though. That's the only thing.
Would this help is if it's
two versions.
three-part,
Basically, in order to have a
is the
motion,
first-
we need to have two versions, a nomination version and a rotation version. Then it makes it easier for us to go which way we want to go.
Well, I think just first things, I think regardless of what process we use to select a chair, it's through nomination, correct? Even if it's a rotation based on seniority, there still needs to be a nomination or is there's an action associated?
Not
No?
necessarily.
Okay. I was just wondering because we keep using nomination or selection, but from what we've heard, that at least from what I've heard, the commission wants to be able to nominate a chair based on seniority with some criteria.
You haven't
Not
heard a majority.
necessarily.
You have not heard a majority
I
of
have
that.
not counted.
I've heard
the-
nomination, and I'm trying to.
There has not been a majority
I'm
established.
trying to take all of your suggestions to be able to put it in a motion so that everyone wants, or a majority that I've heard wants to have criteria for selecting the chair. Some of the criteria includes rotation based on seniority. I've heard 2 for the rotation and 2 that are not very clear. Commissioner Lee has not given his opinion on whether it's rotation or nomination process. So on that is split. So what I can bring forward, if you would like, is criteria for that process, which is if you choose to do it by seniority, what that might look like. If you choose to do it by nomination, what that may look like. Both could have criteria. If that makes it easier for you to see a document that has the procedures for rotation or procedures for nomination. That would help move this forward because on that item there is not a majority consensus, and I want to be able to give you a motion that you can all vote on and feel free that you're going to feel confident that you're going to get a document that you can respond to.
I have a question. First of all, if you go by seniority, there might be a time that, like a person like me, that I would be senior at any time of the election rotation that you go. So you have to vote for me each time. First of all, I want to be on record. When it was on rotation, I've never taken my turn because I'm not interested in that part. It's not because I want to be one of the ones who's being doing the job of the chair, but I think it's the fair and democratic way. And seeing how things work, I think that is the best policy ever. But having said that, the fact is that seniority also causes a problem because I've worked so hard in the community and always to be appointed to this position, so I would be always on the seniority. So how would that work? As far as if you go by seniority. If it is by rotation, when it's my turn or whoever turns, one says, okay, I decline because I have other duties. If it's not by rotation and it's by seniority, I think, unless there are ways that you guys see, because you see a lot of this kind of stuff. So if it is by seniority, how does that work if a person is there forever?
I think we're too in the weeds on this right now. That's another discussion. If we decide, we suggest, I think it'll be helpful perhaps for people to see the two different processes and the types of regulations or procedures that might accompany one or the other, so you can sort of see how that's in play without having to get into the discussion of that right now.
So what we can give is, if you'd like, so again, we can do 3 parts. So one is that the direction is for staff to draft rules and procedures for the commission and to bring that forward by August. The second is to develop criteria for selecting the chair, and under that is 2 parts. One is by rotation, and whatever rotation, even rotation requires some sort of criteria, as well as nomination. We'll give you those criteria, how you want to go about that, and then you can respond to that in that meeting when we bring that. And then when the selection of the chair occurs during the month. So that could be folded into it. So unless you want to make that decision. So that's a three-part motion that's been amended from what Ms. Cleary said based on comments I've heard from you.
Okay, if there are three parts, the number two, which is election by rotation or by nomination, why do we need to postpone it till that day? If it is not contingent to the criteria of the role and additional authorities of a chairperson. If we want to authorize, by the way, again on record, I have nominated Chair Deaver, and I absolutely love the way she runs the commission and all that. It just, I like the process and procedure to be something that one day when not all of us maybe know each other, we would have the right direction into what we are doing, or at least we would be fair in what we are doing. So, if it is not contingent to the additional, because right now as is, I don't see any need for any additional information on what the chair should do. If we want to add the authority of whoever the chairperson would be in the future, we want to give that in the city government, and the department also says that, oh, the chair has to do so many different other things that we need to procedurize it. I can understand that we have to wait and see, because that might be a major decision as far as who the chair is.
I believe that even if we act on this motion is put forth and it goes forth, that we can still make the final decision independently. I mean, this decision about how we're going to do, it won't necessarily postpone if that's your concern. Yeah. I don't think that is a problem with this motion.
There isn't a majority consensus on how this process is going to work. I'm hearing from the commission.
You can ask for us and we'll vote. Then you can decide how we are voting.
I have a suggestion. If there are commissioners here who think that their idea is going to pass, then they should just make a motion on it and we'll vote.
That's
if
Robert's rules.
if there's some people who think there's consensus and not, then let's make a motion and vote. I'm not going to make that motion, quite frankly, because I don't think there's consensus, and I'm not happy with the way things are going in terms of the procedure to decide this. I've already given my 2 cents, and that's about it. So if there's people who think that, if there's commissioners, there's colleagues of mine who think there's going to be, there is something that's passable in terms of a motion, if they want to go one way or another, then please, by all means, make a motion.
It seems to me that the motion that was proposed for consideration gives us the opportunity to move this down the road and to clarify some things that I think might be in question about whether everybody's on the same page. Ms. Vartanian.
And that's what I'm going to say. There's just 3 parts because of all the varying opinions on this, and I think it's important when there's a lot of passion. Obviously, I can sense that, and I think that's important. So the motion that Ms. Cleary is putting forward, if that's not something that you'd like, if you don't want to develop procedures, then I haven't heard that yet. I've heard that we need procedures, so that's why that's the first part of that motion is. If you just want to be able to say we want to be able to draft that and then come up with a selection of the chair today or tomorrow, that's fine too. It's just we're trying to bundle this up in a way that every single commissioner can feel comfortable. We're obviously not ready to make a decision, or I haven't heard that we're ready to make a decision today. So we're trying to be able to put it in a framework so that you can comfortably make a decision.
Commissioner Cavani.
It's not about passion. It's not about that, because Mr. Quintero's term is up in only a few more months. This has no effect on me, 0. But what I want to do, and as part of what I think my role on this commission is to leave the future commissioners something that they can lean on comfortably. So I'm going to make a motion. I'm going to make a motion that staff begins to look into drafting rules and procedures for the commission, and also to prepare 2 different selection processes for the chairperson. That's my motion.
We have a second.
Having a deadline
Oh, fine. Deadline being July or August.
Amended with a deadline of August. Well, July. I wasn't July or August. I'd rather have a specific, so I'm just saying August. Or it could be that.
Is
I'm
there
just
a
throwing it out
second?
there.
July, I would go
July,
for July.
sure.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
I have a second.
Roll call.
Commissioners Hovhannissian,
Abstain.
Kavanian,
Yes.
Lee,
Abstain.
Jarikian,
Yes.
Chairperson Deaver.
Yes. Next item.
Item A3, motion giving direction to staff regarding use of discretionary funds for programming.
Okay, so this last item before you is, again, to get some feedback from the Commission for the discretionary funds as part of the work plan. For a 2-year work plan, the Commission designated $30,000 in a fund called Discretionary, and basically this was anticipated to fund programs and projects not previously discussed, projects that required additional funding or unforeseen costs. So it was just an extra pot of money to be able to use for new ideas that we didn't originally think of, or, just to have that safety project, well, just in case if this program costs a little bit more money. And during the recent review and selection process for the Commission's programs, the selection committee, one of them expressed interest in one of the proposals that included programs beyond the scope of the RFP. So this was an RFP that went beyond what was requested, and this included video exhibits and projections in public spaces, concerts on buses, and photography street exhibits. So it's very exciting stuff, and these are types of programs that could potentially be funded using the discretionary fund, but of course we don't want to work within a vacuum, so I want to bring this forward to the Commission to find out, to discuss the option of, any potential programs or projects that could be funded through the discretionary fund. It is a small pot of money, but we can still do a lot with it. And if you have any ideas, if there's something that you saw in one of the proposals that was submitted but wasn't selected that you want to bring forward, again, you can share that today during this meeting, or send it to me, and I hope to be able to, develop these opportunities, bring them forward so that they could be implemented during this work plan, since that's when it's budgeted for. And then it could also give us some ideas for expanding specific areas for our future work plan, which we'll begin working on this summer and fall. So as I mentioned, we'll be busy. So if there's any potential programs or projects that you think that we could use, I don't need budgets right now. I just need a concept or an idea. If you want to bring that forward, I can bring that a more fleshed out plan and just talk about how much that cost is, all of the options at once, and then the Commission can choose to designate certain amounts to the projects. Yes?
Open studio tour.
Commissioner Cavagna.
So there's no guaranteed amount out of this $30,000 that we're going to spend, right? This is just simply that we have that money put aside, and that if we find something that's outside of the scope of the work that we do, that we can fund that potentially.
Correct. And because it is Urban Art Fund, we have to keep in mind that it's public art. It needs to be something along those lines. So this is not a guarantee. This is just to bring ideas forward and to say, you had 10 ideas. Each of these ideas is, 30,000. We have to pick one, or it could be a combination. I just want to, I feel comfortable that we can use this money and not worry about having that just in case rainy day fund.
Did any group or organization or individual ask for any specific money that we don't have in our program? No, we're still open. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I will note, I had already mentioned, I think it was one of the example that you had given, but one of the committees that I had sat on, there was the performance artists type of group that for consideration. Commissioner Cavagna?
I will move the item giving staff it's actually kind of worded a little bit weird in the actual motion itself, because if I give staff direction to use the discretionary funds for programming, it would sound a little bit wrong. But Mr. Grant, is that an issue if I word it that way, or we understand the ramifications of that?
That staff has the discretion to decide how to spend for a particular event.
Right,
Yeah.
to basically solicit events or to entertain those ideas. Okay, so I will make that motion.
You have a second?
Yes.
Roll call.
Commissioners Ovanesian,
Yes.
Kavanian,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Sharikian,
Yes.
Chairperson Deaver.
Yes. Next item.
Item 6, Commission staff comments.
I have a few comments to make.
Commissioner Sharikian.
First of all, I would like to congratulate our city that we have a new mayor, Zare Sinanian, and I'm sure he'll do a good job. Second, I received an email from city staff about next week, Remembrance Week. It's April 24th, and I'm sure we have many events going on in the city of Glendale. Please take a time, moment, or an hour or two, go to one of those events and just enjoy and remember those days. Finally, I would like to hear in our next meeting some reports from Art and Culture organization that we submitted there for the festival, if there is any updates on their project, and from David O'Brien, if there is anything going on. And I would like to make this kind of reports on a monthly basis, because those are the things are happening, and we would like to hear about them in our, at least I would like to hear about them in our meeting, so we can have a, not just the decision maker, but also kind of
Updates.
yeah, as you point.
Are you asking?
And
May I
yes.
pose a question? I just want to pose a question because this feels like adding an item to the agenda. So we would need somebody else to. Am I right about that?
Well, as part of my staff comments, I was going to give an update just to say that the City Council approved the two professional services agreements with AFTA Productions as well as John O'Brien. So we're in the process for the contract, and that the item for the event management firm is scheduled to go to City Council on May 5th. On May 5th.
So technically it's not approved yet.
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
okay,
So
okay.
I try to give updates during staff comments. If there's, you want me to add, we need to add something, we can.
Again, not to get everybody's ire here, but we don't have really a process exactly in place on if one commission member would like something to be placed on the agenda. Typically other commissions, they go through the chair and then the chair discusses it with staff. However, we will bring that process to you by July, so that, again, if a commission member would like something on the agenda, we'll have some clear ways of how it gets on that.
Okay. And let me ask one more question, just in terms of process. If to have updates, can that happen during this comment section as opposed to having it as an agenda item if that was to happen on a monthly basis?
It can, but we have to be careful during, staff and commissioner comment section. We can't have a discussion going back and forth. There may be a commissioner who feels strongly that something needs to be said about that in addition. So we can't have the conversation going back and forth. It'd probably be better that it be agendized, and that way questions could, more extensive questions can be asked and discussion could take place.
Right. Thank you.
May I add one more thing?
Of course.
Considering the amount of work that we're diving into and the scope of the work, during my first meeting here, I said, how can you handle all this business within one meeting, within a month? That's almost impossible. But considering that it's been almost a year now, and I see we are involved in many, many events and directly or indirectly involved, I would like to make a motion, or somehow can we start a internship program or volunteer program to help the staffing? One, or two, what's the procedure, or how can we add another body to help us and help Annette, because we're getting busier, and in the next few years, 4 or 5 years down the line, with amount of staff that we have, 2 or 1, it will be almost impossible to come up with and resolve all those events. I would like to see how we think about this, and then we need to start some type of programming. Internship program is the best program, I think. We can have volunteers and basically have a maybe 5 or 3 people weekly, 10 hours a day, come and help them. I'm open with the suggestions.
Ms. Cleary?
We internally within the department, we have a process in terms of soliciting volunteers. So we might be a little early in the process to see what our needs are. But when we get to that point, rather than have a formalized process through the commission, we can utilize the methods we have within the library to solicit volunteers and interns, actually.
Okay.
Thank you. Was that complete?
No, I'm done.
Just to follow up on what Commissioner Shirikian said, because our city has honored its diversity in the community, and they have the Week of Remembrance. There's a major program set up for all 5 days. One day in collaboration, Glendale Unified School District on Monday has an event at Glendale High at 7 o'clock. Our city, in collaboration with the Commission of the Status of the Women, we have, on Tuesday we have the Poetry Night, which is going to be a phenomenal night at the plaza with a harp and 2 ladies with musical instruments, and high school kids have provided beautiful poetry that is going to be recited. On Wednesday, with the Status of Women, we have the trafficking of human beings. It's a presentation, very strong, very interesting. We have 5. I've been involved because I'm in all of those committees, and the chair to the Men's in Humanities, so we've organized all of that. So there are going to be 5 ladies coming in, and 2 professors, victims of the situation, and etc. So there's going to be a major presentation at the Central Library. On Thursday, April 24th, 7 o'clock at Alex Theater, there's a major program, which is the actual commemorative event for the Armenian genocide. On Friday, with the YWCA, we have an excellent program, and again, presentation on the domestic violence, which is a major issue, and they have experts in the field, and they're going to present a phenomenal presentation with enough information for people who could take home and help friends and neighbors who might be in dire need. So I would recommend that the community would welcome all this work and effort that there has been with the collaboration and really by the sponsorship of the City of Glendale to come and attend and be part of us. That's basically what I need to tell, and I think I need to leave as fast as possible because there are other events happening. Thank you.
Commissioner Lee?
I have 2 items. One, invitation to any and all. The City of Los Angeles, through the Mayor's Office and the City Council, will be putting on the Asian Pacific American Islander Heritage Month ceremony on May 9th, starting at 10 a.m. in the City Hall, Los Angeles council chambers, and then in their south lawn for the actual festivities. Second item, put a save the date, July 12th and 13th. We are having our annual Lotus Festival at Echo Park Lake. Echo Park has been revitalized, so we've been dark for the last 3 years, but now we're in full swing. So please join us at Echo Park Lake, July 12th and 13th for our annual Lotus Festival. Thank you.
And no other staff comments. Ms. Fratania?
As I quickly went through, I just want to reiterate that the council approved the 2 professional services agreements, and then the event management firm PSA with Glendale Arts will not be reviewed until May 5th by the City Council. So I'll give an update once we have some more updates on that. Just a reminder that the applications for the Beyond the Box program, the utility box mural program, are due tomorrow. So we are getting a lot of great proposals. So I'm really excited to review those with Commissioners Lee and Sharikian and make selections. And those are going to be painted on Saturday, May 17th, along with the Great American Cleanup. We're also pretty much close to finalizing the dates and the schedule for performing arts grants at Brand Library and Arts Center. And just to let the community know, every Friday night between Memorial Day or starting the weekend after Memorial Day all the way through the end of September, we will have free public performances on the plaza at Brand Library and Arts Center. There's a total of 15 scheduled. 11 are funded through the Arts and Culture Commission's grants, and then we have an additional 3 that are at off-site locations. And once that schedule is finalized, we hope within the next 2 weeks we'll start promoting it through our Facebook website as well as postcards. Another event that's coming up that we will be sharing on our website and through our email list, the California Lawyers for the Arts is having a talk on intellectual property law overview for the visual artist. So they will have Sarah Conley Odenkirk, who's a fine art attorney, go over just the policies and ordinances nationwide related to intellectual property rights and the rights that artists have and things that they should know. This is going to take place on Wednesday, April 23rd at 7 p.m. at Vertigo Job Center. The tickets for general admission is $20 online, $25 at the door. And if people want information, they can find it on our library Facebook page as well as Brand Library and Arts Center Facebook page. But if people are on our mailing list, they will get this information. And the last that I think most people probably saw, but it's still in works, is the city unveiled a new design for the website. It's exciting, so we're still working out a few of the kinks, but the good thing is that the commission does have a dedicated page on the libraries page. We also have the URL Glendale Arts and Culture .org that gets redirected. So in all of our promotional materials, we can use that URL. That'll direct people to the page. So right now, community members can find our arts and cultural plan, our work plan, a little bit about the commission, as well as any artist opportunities that we have. So the utility box program information is there. And as new opportunities become available here or, in other agencies, for example, we promoted the Metro Open Call for Artists, which was open for Glendale artists to apply. So we're trying to create it as a resource. We have information about our events, but we're still using Glendale Arts as another tool to get the message out about all of our artist opportunities as well as events. So once the site is a little bit more finalized, we will bring an update to you just so you can understand all the functions. So just wanted to let you know that it's happening and we're working on it.
Thank you.
Just want to mention that our next meeting is on May 15th, and next day, the 16th, is the start of the Beyond the Box preparation. So therefore, until then, we probably have some type of announcement of the artists.
We have a special meeting scheduled at the end of April, so the selection and the approval of the artists will take place at that meeting so that we have everybody lined up and ready to go in time for the event. So.
I'm excited too.
Next item.
Oh, can I add?
Oh, hold. Okay.
I apologize, I forgot the Brand Library. I mean, the revitalization of it is so... I like to use the word awesome, that I really encourage everyone to be able to utilize the facility. The areas that you can sit and read, it's like going to an executive manor and being able to relax and read in an executive manner. The fireplace has been restored. Everything's been restored so elegantly that, I really encourage everyone to go out to the library, Brand Library. Thank you.
Next item.
Item 7, written communications.
And we have none. That is our final agenda item, so we are adjourned.